Hey, good afternoon to you. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, 4:30 from Hot Air, David Strom is here. At 5 o'clock, the governor of North Dakota and a Trump surrogate, Doug Burgum, will be with us ahead of his trip to Virginia this weekend. And Daniel Turner is here at 5:30. We talk energy with him, as always. And we'll talk to you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL.
The only thing that makes this warrantless collection of millions of Americans' international communications lawful, quote unquote, is the government's certification that it is targeting foreigners and only foreigners. If the government changes its mind and wants to go after an American, it should have to go back and get the warrant that it skipped on the front end. This is not that hard. By the way, the argument that we would need 2,000 judges to filter through warrant requirements begs the question, which is it? The proponents' own data indicate they will only get a hit for 1% to 2% via metadata. Some of those will have exceptions under our warrant amendment that we offer, so it'd probably be less than 1%. So the 2,000 judges argument is just straight up false. It's just not that hard. If you want to go after an American, if you want to look at their information, get a warrant.
Congressman Chip Roy vocalizing the common sense position today, but Congress, of course, incapable of advancing common sense positions. Here with more on the debate about the government spying on all of us is George Hill, retired supervisory intelligence analyst and an FBI whistleblower. He's on the phone. Hello, George.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to have you back with us. But obviously, I'm disappointed with the outcome today. Congress has voted to reauthorize this spy program for another 2 years, a vote of 273 to 147. And earlier in the day, there was a debate over an amendment by Congressman Andy Biggs that would impose a warrant requirement when it involved American citizens. Congress defeated that. It was a split vote today on that question, which means it doesn't pass. What's your reaction, sir?
There's nothing in history to indicate that tyrants willingly give back power, and that's what we're seeing here. They're not going to let this go. So I feel badly for the people who are disappointed, but they should expect that. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it's going to go, and it's going to continue to go that way.
One of the sadder pieces of audio on this, it comes from Speaker Mike Johnson, who explained earlier this week that he originally thought that the government was routinely abusing the rights of Americans, but then he went into a skiff, and now he thinks the government should have this power. Take a listen.
When I was a member of the judiciary, I saw all the abuses of the FBI, the terrible abuses over and over and over, the hundreds of thousands of abuses. And then when I became speaker, I went to the skiff and got the confidential briefing from sort of the other perspective on that to understand the necessity of Section 702 of FISA and how important it is for national security. And it gave me a different perspective.
So what does that tell you, George Hill, when you hear something like that from the Speaker of the House?
He's not an intelligence analyst, so I know how this dog and pony show goes. You bring somebody in there like him, and you throw out a couple of fact patterns, and then you overwhelm them with a blizzard of data that it doesn't have to be related, but you paint this picture that at any moment now, without this tool, hundreds of thousands of Americans are going to die. Director Wray did it the other day in testimony, talking about all, red lights are blinking. And he just got worked, which is an easy thing to do to someone who is, and it's not a pejorative term, but he's ignorant. He doesn't know how this works. So he got rolled. I'm not giving him an excuse or an out. It's just that he doesn't have the wherewithal. And look, I and other members of the Suspendables, Kyle Seraphin and Steve and Garrett O'Boyle, we've all tried to reach out to these people to try to educate them, people meaning representatives. They have no interest. They don't want to know.
It's awful. I heard Nancy Pelosi on the House floor today saying that if this warrant requirement comes into place, that's the kind of thing that would allow another 9/11. It was like, I said, it's really over the top. So when you get these lawmakers behind closed doors and they give them a secret briefing, they must tell them you're going to be responsible for the next terror attack unless you give us these powers.
Absolutely. They're so easy to work. Having done multiple terrorism briefings, both at the National Security Agency and the FBI, there's a certain language and a tone you use to get your point across. And the people that are briefing members of Congress are from the intelligence community are expert at doing that and hitting all their raw nerves and all their launch codes. And they're always, they meaning Congress and Senate, they're always going to roll over and reauthorize this. Now, let me say, just, 702 has been out there long before we had these violations of people's constitutional protections. The difference is that Barack Obama gave broad across the intelligence community the wherewithal to search the 702 database. So within days of Obama giving that authorization, the FBI had what's called, really cleverly named, data warehouse set up to ingest all this data from NSA servers over to FBI servers. So he opened up the door to this, and people on the left, like Wired Magazine and others, had a conniption saying that, oh my God, he's given Trump this power to do this. And I'm no fan of Barack Obama's, but it was a genius move on his part by enabling these intelligence agencies to have the crown jewels of collection. We're talking 5 billion records a day.
How dangerous is all of this in your view, George?
Well, we're seeing it. Look, you're either a constitutional and Bill of Rights absolutist or you're not. So you either believe in the Bill of Rights as it's written or you don't. And if you don't, then you need to engage in the procedures laid out in the Constitution to make changes or amendments or additions or deletions. The simple truth is they don't care, and the American citizenry doesn't seem to care either, because they'll watch Director Wray and Speaker Johnson on CBS or NBC, and they'll say, oh my God, all red lights are flashing red. Or all, the warning lights are all flashing red. And, in fairness, Ray's probably right, but let's just do the math. You've got 10 million people that have come across the border that we don't know who they are. If 0.1% of those people are problematic, that's 10,000 terrorists in the country. That's just the tip of the iceberg. We know that Cuba has been training Venezuelan intelligence personnel, and people from Hezbollah and Iran have been going into Venezuela, picking up Venezuelan passports, and migrating across the border for over a decade. So Ray's right, but is he right on the facts? Is anybody from Congress saying, well, could you give us some specificity as to date, time, who the organization is? He just bloviates.
And there's something particularly offensive about the fact that the Biden administration has kicked open the border as wide as it's ever been, and then turns around and says, hey, look at all of these threats coming across the border. We need more power over you.
That's what the government does, right? They break your leg, and then they put it in a plaster cast and say, here, now thank me for fixing your leg.
Yeah.
It's classic.
Well, we've got this headline from NBC over the last 24 hours. A man on the terror watch list released by the Border Patrol. We now find out that was twice. An Afghan migrant on the terrorist watch list spent nearly a year inside the United States after he was apprehended and then released by Border Patrol agents last year, U.S. officials told NBC News. In other words, the Biden administration released a guy on the terror watch list into America. The man was arrested in February and then released last month again by an immigration judge who was not told that he was a national security threat. You know whose job that would have been? The Biden administration's. They didn't. So when it comes to protecting us from actual national security threats, not so much, but powers that let them spy on Americans, that's when the White House calls every member of Congress and twists their arm.
But it gets worse. So I know from my contacts who are actually on the border that when they come across someone on the known terror watch list, they don't separate that person from the other individuals that they were traveling with and do any type of exploitation of any pocket litter, electronic devices, or anything on those. So if Vince and George are on the terror watch list and Bill, Bob, Fred, and Jerry and Frank are traveling with us, they never bothered. There's no effort made to determine whether or not what the degree of association is with Vince and George. It's like, oh, sorry, we're only after these guys because we knew about them. You all can go about your merry way. So the level of scrutiny that's taking place on the border is malpractice with an exponent.
Do you get the sense at all, and obviously, you know, you've been out in public with your criticisms. You're very concerned about the direction our country's going, our government's going in particular. Do you get the sense at all that internally there are people within these agencies who can see the warning signs about how badly the American people's liberties are being trampled and want to turn this thing around?
I don't see any evidence of that. If there were, there would be more than just a handful of whistleblowers going in front of Congress. There'd be more people, going to the media and finding other outlets to get the word out. Look, the FBI came up with this program called TRP, Threat Resource Planning, and they have codified in the Human Resources Department an entire mechanism for promotion, and it's built upon, filling out stats. So when we joke about it on Twitter or Truth about, claiming a stat, it's really kind of tongue in cheek. There is an actual codified mechanism that exists within a framework post-Patriot Act for FBI agents to climb the ladder just by charting stats. And like most people, they want to take the easiest path available to them, and 702, unfortunately, is the easiest path. They can create parallel investigations. I know that, I've stopped my intelligence analysts that work for me, but you can just peruse that like a kid in a candy store and cherry pick where you want to go, and you're off to the races. And then you bring somebody like Johnson into the skiff and you show them what you got. And, yeah, it may be a fact pattern, but it doesn't necessarily constitute a threat, but it doesn't matter.
So I've talked about this with a couple of guests, but I want to make sure I understand it correctly. When you use the Section 702 database, you're using what's supposed to be for watching foreigners and foreign threats, and you're looking at an American. What I keep hearing is that the FBI agents will construct parallel investigations where they won't even acknowledge, I guess, that they got the heads up from 702, and then they'll pretend like they found it through some other organic means as they investigate an American citizen.
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. And there's no way, short of that individual ratting themselves out, that anybody's going to find out, be any the wiser. I remember when I was working at NSA, you can't spy on Five Eye Partners. And I remember seeing Five Eye Partners come through on collection, and there wasn't a darn thing I could do about it. I mean, not a darn thing, but, I was highly constrained as to what I could do. So prior to Barack Obama, the NSA was pretty hard over on, protecting, the Five Eye Partnership and the Bill of Rights and people's protection. And that all changed with Obama.
Yeah, for the worse. George Hill, a retired supervisory intelligence analyst, FBI whistleblower. Sir, thank you for your love of country and for your time today. I really appreciate that. As we speak, we're awaiting remarks from President Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson together in Mar-a-Lago down in Palm Beach, Florida. They are supposed to be speaking on the issue of election integrity coming up. So if we get any live remarks that I can share with you, I will do that. Let's see. Let's go to Dave now in Silver Spring. He's on line one. Dave, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. The question I think needs to be asked is it worth living in a safe country if you have to give up your liberty? And I say no. I say, give me my liberty. Life is full of risk and is fraught with danger. Car accidents are terrible. We could get rid of every car accident by getting rid of every vehicle. There were no vehicle accidents in the 1700s. But, I'll take my freedom and my liberty and to live my life the way I want and choose my leaders rather than have a nanny state that protects me and says, don't worry, you just, we'll decide where you can go, what your social credits can be, what trains you can ride on, what presidents you can vote for. I don't want that kind of a world. I'll take the risk.
Every day of the week.
Everybody has that. Because Johnson, who's the Speaker of the House, is Johnson is his name, right?
Yes.
Apparently he was against FISA until they took him in a room and told him all the scary monsters that are out there. Yeah, okay, but I don't want to give up my I know there's scary monsters out there. I don't want to give up my freedom, though.
No,
so I'd say
I'm right there with you.
86 the FISA, 86 the Patriot Act. Let's go back to the way we lived in the 1990s. That was just fine with me.
Yeah, and this is why I keep saying we need to get rid of TSA. There's all sorts of things, and once this stuff comes into place, reeling it back is almost impossible. Which is yet another warning against adopting any more of this sort of keep me safe government attitude.
Absolutely. We're not infants. We had parents. They raised us. They did a good job in most cases, and I love them. But I got my own kids, my own life, and I'd like to lead it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Dave, thank you.
Thanks,
it's the classic assessment of all of this, which is that you are entitled to liberty. Liberty comes with risk. It comes with free will. People will make bad decisions. And what sort of life is it if the government controls everything? That's not living at all. That's not living at all. And so today, a 2-year can kick on this government spying power. The Senate's supposed to take it up next week. At the moment, there's a little bit of a delay from sending it to the House to the Senate because Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna invoked what they say is an arcane procedural delay today. So God bless her for that. It at least taps the brakes on this legislation for the moment, but eventually it should be making its way to the Senate next week, where they're likely to pass this thing. But yeah, you've got to be stronger than that. Speaker Johnson, for him to acknowledge the abuses and then go behind closed doors and then be told, you're going to cause a terror attack if you don't keep giving us spying power, and then he collapses under pressure. He folds like origami. You got to have a stronger spine than that. Big time. And now I don't think it's a mistake that he's appearing alongside Donald Trump. Trump was, of course, urging Republicans to kill this FISA nonsense earlier this week. They didn't listen to him. They should have. And so Speaker Johnson now going to appear alongside him as they talk about election integrity coming up. And not a mistake. I think Speaker Johnson realizes his very job is on the line, and he's doing everything he can to hold on, including standing next to Trump and talking about an issue he cares about. Stay with us. Ahead, David Strom from Hot Air on the other side of the news. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 4:35, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum joins us at 5 o'clock. I'll talk about that Trump campaign that he's supporting these days and why he's in Virginia this weekend. And then Daniel Turner is here at 5:30. We talk energy with him. Joe Biden has a bold new plan to raise your gas prices ahead of the election. What? Why is he doing that? We'll talk to Daniel Turner about that. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Have you been tracking the news of the left-wing Antifa bomber in the state of Alabama who tried to bomb the Alabama Attorney General's office? I know there's a lot going on, but it's probably worth noting this. Certainly, if this guy was a right-winger, the media would be rubbing it in your face over and over and over, but that's not, of course, what's happening here. This is a left-wing guy. He's an Antifa guy by the name of Kyle Benjamin Douglas Calvert. He's got a lot of names. He's 26 years old, of Irondale, Alabama. He was charged with the malicious use of an explosive and possession of an unregistered destructive device, according to the Department of Justice this week. He planted a bomb. Just outside the Attorney General's office in Alabama, and put up a bunch of stickers all over the place telling people to, quote, support your local Antifa. Anti-fascism is community self-defense. There's a picture of an AK-47 superimposed with the words defend nature, and on and on and on. On his social media, he identifies as pansexual. What's going on here? David Strom is an expert on all of these subjects. He's associate editor over at Hot Air, and he joins us now. David, good to have you back with us.
Hey, it's always fun, Vince. As you know, you're my favorite.
I appreciate that, and so help me understand, David. How come we don't know much about the Antifa bomber in Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that he's not that interesting compared to the fact that we don't know anything about him. We just got the bit of news that they found him and they arrested him. But, if this had been some white supremacist guy, putting up Confederate flags everywhere, we would have had a national conversation about this for an endless period of time. It would be proof positive that MAGA people, who are also, by the way, the ones randomly punching women in New York, we're told, are on a violent spree. But because it's an Antifa guy, we get a little news blurb and then it disappears. And it's happened again. And of course, he's trans. So you definitely have to bury this. The narrative is not being supported, and so we just don't hear about it.
No, we don't hear anything about it. And also, I can't help but notice this is just the latest person who identifies as either transgender or pansexual or whatever it is, the sort of the alphabet people who have committed an act of violence like this, detonating an explosive device outside of a government official's office. That's a big deal. Why am I seeing this with such frequency?
Well, I think it actually has to do with the connection between Antifa, alphabet ideology, and mental illness. What we have done is we've cultivated and celebrated a group of people. We have inculcated in them the notion that a genocide is being committed against them. And so now you're getting things like the Trans Day of Revenge. People are out there saying that they're being oppressed, which is of course absurd. I mean, there's no group higher on the intersectional ladder right now than transgender people. I mean, we're getting flags everywhere. The President of the United States is celebrating them, but that's not the life experience of these people who, after all, are trans because they're mentally ill. They need help, not to be told that, they are the apotheosis of, the human experience. And, as the Uber mentioned out there, those of us who were not part of their tribe are trying to kill them off. And so I see this as a story having more to do with the fact that we are celebrating mentally ill people and cultivating in them a desire for revenge against normal people.
So for those lefties whose judgment is not entirely corrupted by their politics, there is a growing awareness around the planet that indulging in this and enabling the destruction of people like this is a bad idea. Overseas in Great Britain, they just had released the results of a 4-year study that found that actually there is no measurable benefit to children by pushing them into trans ideology, injecting them with hormones, chopping them up, sterilizing them. And in fact, maybe we should hit the brakes on this. You have J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, who's been out there saying that we need to defend women, and it's insane that we can't these days. What's it going to take for the American left to catch up to what some of these other people are saying overseas?
Well, first of all, I'd like to distinguish between the liberals and the left. I mean, there are a lot of relatively sane liberals who have kept silent about this until they've been given permission by experts. And that's what's happened in Sweden, in the Netherlands, and now in Great Britain. Pretty much everywhere in Europe, they put the brakes on it, and actually they've done a 180.
Yes.
It's more than putting the brakes on it. They're actually out there saying the evidence does not exist for this, and there's plenty of evidence that it's a bad idea. Here in the United States, I think we're well before the crest on this. In fact, the momentum is still behind the alphabet ideology people, and I think that's a combination of the fact that the Democratic Party has made this a civil rights issue of a generation. They banked an awful lot of political capital on this. Blue states have been creating, what they call sanctuary states, which, to be perfectly blunt, is all about defending parents who kidnap their children against court orders. So non-custodial parents kidnap their children and go to a sanctuary state to do gender-affirming care. And, so the Democrats are all in on this. And then you have a multi-billion-dollar industry out there that is just making an enormous amount of money on this, whether it's the pharmaceutical companies, the hospitals. You may remember a year ago, Matt Walsh got video from Vanderbilt Hospital where the administration just said, look, you cannot opt out of this. Your conscience doesn't matter. There's no religious exemptions because we make a lot of money on this.
Yes.
There will be consequences if you do not participate because we're betting our financial future on this. And so I think it's going to take years for a complete reversal.
So, but there is something outside of the people who have a direct financial benefit from all of this evil, which I can understand. Their motivations are profit. I got that part. And the nonprofits that are associated with it, the Human Rights Campaign and all these organizations that are now figuring out, they can generate more money. Planned Parenthood, they can generate more money by getting into this. It's obviously terrible what they're doing, but at least I can understand their motivations. But outside of that, sort of the average lefty in the country who's been buying into all of this, to what extent is that just that they don't want the right to be correct? In other words, like, I see this happen with a lot of issues, like COVID is a good example, where the right will adopt the correct position and the left is so entrenched, they feel like the biggest defeat they could possibly present is admitting that their political opponents had it right in the first place.
Oh, I think that is very much a big part of it. I think that's why a lot of skeptical liberals have stuck with this. I know plenty of people who secretly worry that this is not the right thing to do. But Ron DeSantis is fighting it. Matt Walsh is fighting it. You're fighting it. I'm fighting it. Rand Paul is. And so clearly we have to be wrong. And so, plus, I think they're just scared to death of the left. Again, I distinguish between the liberals, the establishment liberals, and the left. Establishment liberals just want power. And they got on this bandwagon because activists are their ground troops.
Well, what you mean by that, when you say establishment liberals, like I'm thinking Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, these are people who don't fundamentally believe in very much. They just create these power alliances in order to stay in power.
Oh, that's yes, exactly right. And what they have done is empowered a group of people who are insane. I mean, clinically insane. I mean, I don't think that's true of the average kid right now who thinks that they identify as non-binary or something. I think some of them have mental illness, and some of it's just the same as the kids who were goth.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, the activists are insane, and that's why we're seeing all this violence. And I think, it's kind of like the, climate change times 10. It's an issue that the left is very passionate about, so that the liberals are like, well, we can tap into that. And, these people are going to go out and register voters. They're going to be the people who, do the ballot harvesting for us. And they've just got all this passion. And so they've attached themselves to insane people.
For sure. Now on this question of insanity, have you seen? I don't know if you've seen the Free Beacon. Aaron Sibarium's reporting today on how the left has been trying to normalize and legitimize self-immolation in the service of its causes. Yep. You seen this? So I'll play a little audio here. This is from Aaron Sibarium today. He got audio from the UCLA Medical School Psychiatry Department. They were hosting a conference of some kind where a number of doctors were all saying that, setting yourself on fire for your political cause is like a totally normal thing. Take a listen to some of this audio.
Community organizers really came together and emphasize that, this was a person who was an active duty Air Force member, and yes, he carried a lot of guilt, and yes, he carried a lot of distress, but does that mean that the actions that he engaged in are any less valid? The underlying question was basically, is it not normal to be distressed when you're seeing this level of carnage for, at this point, 6 months?
So normalizing political suicide. Meanwhile, actual health professionals are saying that's insane and you shouldn't do that. But here you have other health professionals saying, who are lefties, saying, oh, yeah, I can understand why he would set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy.
Well, and that was at a medical school. So these are people who are lecturing medical students on what is normal. And I mean, UCLA Medical School has become a profoundly scary place. I mean, if you're going to see, and I'm not joking about this, if you are going to see a younger doctor, make sure that they were not educated in the United States. I never would have said that 10 years ago. But one of the things that I've noticed is that, and I've bounced this off of other doctors, and they say, yes, they're still being taught science-based medicine outside the United States, but for the past 5, 6, 7 years, medical schools in the United States are all about indigenous medicine and DEI and, obviously transgender medicine.
Yeah.
They have abandoned science.
Indigenous medicine, that we're talking like snake oil, and there's a reason snake oil salesman has become an expression for somebody who's selling you a fake cure. It's not real. It's not, but now we're going back to snake oil. It is truly a regressive movement. Hey, one more for you, David Strom. That self-immolation sequence reminded me also of something I heard on Barry Weiss's NPR podcast this week. She was talking about NPR and how corrupt that news organization is. And she played a small segment of them also justifying self-immolation. Listen.
What makes people turn to self-immolation as a form of protest?
Well, self-immolation is one of a series of protest tactics that people may use, which basically amount to the sort of weaponization of their bodies.
It's like, hey, ho, ho, that guy has got to go. But, it just gets more crazy.
Their own lives.
I talked to other professors in preparation for this conversation, and something that came up was like, it's seen by many as a very extreme form of nonviolent direct action.
Seen by many.
Yes. I mean, it is the most extreme form of nonviolent direct action because self-immolation is not meant to hurt others. It's not meant to destroy property. It's really meant to use one's own life to make a statement. It's also on a spectrum, right? Like sort of on a spectrum from, for example, hunger strike. Some people do things like nail parts of their bodies to buildings. And then sort of self-immolation is like on that spectrum of the most extreme kinds of nonviolent direct action.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, David, do you remember that Al-Qaeda had a magazine that was dedicated to teaching them how to be like crazy terrorists? And it wasn't called Inspire, or wasn't that the name of it? It's like,
I don't remember, but that's very much in line with this. I mean, it's the same psychology, but this is now, I mean, NPR is as mainstream as you could get, and there they are just casually discussing this. And it makes you wonder how, and by the way, your tax dollars helped that. It makes you wonder how the United States is going to survive. Or really, I see this as part of the Anglosphere, where, for some reason, the home of the Enlightenment has gone insane. The oldest university in the world is Oxford, and Oxford has gone insane. You read science magazines, Nature, Springer, Scientific American. You will see paeans to indigenous ways of knowing. It's just, I don't get it, but it's beyond dangerous because these are the core institutions of our culture, and they're gone.
And the way to describe them is definitely regressive. I mean, we're losing civilization. Hey, I really appreciate your time as always. David Strom, always such good insight and a great website over there, Hot Air. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you today. All right, coming up, my next guest, Donald Trump says he'd like for him to have an important role in his next administration. That's North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. He's in town this weekend. He'll tell us why. That's ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show.